All right, and joining us in Studio B as part of his monthly visit is Bakersfield Police Chief Brent Stratton. Brent, thank you for coming in this morning.
Good morning. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Just watching this and just some of the initial insight into some of it with Captain Ryan Croker, you were saying that you have a meeting today with the FBI, sort of as is it a debriefing?
We're still learning information from them. You know, as we released the investigation over to their control, you know, the termination of how this event unfolded and how it ultimately ended. There's still some information that we don't know, and they're wrapping up their investigation, and sometimes these things take time. So we still have detectives that are assigned to liaise with them and to provide the information that we have from early on and to be able to contribute towards their criminal investigation. So, you know, it's common in these type of investigations to get, you know, a 72-hour debrief or something like that. Just here's some of the initial information that we have, because there's still a lot of questions and a lot of things that we don't know that we'd like to be able to confirm as well. So in the days, weeks and months ahead, we'll know more as this thing firmly wraps up.
One of the things that Captain Croker was talking about in the interview was, one of the things he really sort of like stressed was the calm nature of the negotiators for the BPD in the early moments and throughout the day and the hours that preceded. Just your reflection on that.
Yeah, being able to have crisis negotiations personnel and those that are trained and being able to communicate this stuff. It's something they train to monthly. It's courses that they go to initially. There's some annual training associated with it, and it's people that have the ability to be able to communicate under difficult situations and circumstances. And the information that I have at this point in speaking with some of them is, you know, that they did a fantastic job of being able to stay calm, to be able to stay and keep somebody talking and communicating. That is a component of de-escalation, if the other person is willing to engage and to be able to have some of that communication to try to do the very best that we can to bring a peaceful resolution. And it's an ideal set of circumstances for everybody to be able to walk out those doors, and that doesn't always get to happen, but that is absolutely the goal of our crisis negotiators when they go in, and that's the expectation of the department, to at least be able to do what we can to try to ensure that's the outcome.
And for what do you understand as far as his demeanor, the suspect's demeanor during this ordeal? Were there big mood swings at all? Or?
Yeah, it's my understanding there's some swings from it, you know, and obviously for a person to get to the point to be able to have to take these drastic measures, it's a pretty deep, in my estimation, it's a pretty deep level of anger and frustration to be able to get to that point. But then being able to maintain a level of calm and communication, and then going back to some anger. And so I certainly think there's some mood swings, and just, you know, this is a lengthy event, and so there's a variety of different emotions. I'm certain of it.
You know, there has been a lot of reaction online, obviously, from people that were following this, whether they were watching live streams or whatnot. Overall, many positive remarks to the BPD and how you handled this. There were a little bit of criticism, and one thing that kind of stood out was there was talk of his daughter he had requested speaking with his ex-wife. Can you just talk about what the BPD looks at when considering something like that in a crisis negotiation?
Sure. You know, BPD is real consistent with across our industry and in our profession when it comes to crisis negotiation training and looking at best practices. And, you know, there's things called, you know, hooks and triggers, right? What are the things that are the hooks that you might be able to speak to somebody to bring them in and to be able to develop that rapport and to communicate and to de-escalate? And then there's things that are the opposite, which are triggers. And these are things that are going to push people away. These are things that are make things emotional. And it's an imperfect and a subjective calculus trying to figure out what are the things with this person that are going to bring them in, that are going to help them to maintain a level of calm and to keep things where they are, and what are the things that are going to push buttons and are going to make the situation worse. And so our negotiators are doing the very best that they can to try to identify the things that we can to bring this to a peaceful resolution. And when you start talking about family, sometimes those might be things that bring people in and break them down and calm them down, and other times those might be the things that make situations worse. And so that's something we're always trying to evaluate with each set of circumstances. But again, the overarching goal is to be able to have the hostages be able to go home, to be able to have take the suspect into custody, and for the officers to be able to go home. Those are the three goals, and it doesn't always work out that way.
Now, we know how this ended when the FBI confronted the suspect. The shooting occurred about 4:30 in the morning. Was there ever a moment before the FBI assumed that position that the BPD, were there any moments where you have learned that there was a chance that it could have happened while you were in command of the situation?
Yeah, I think the entirety of that time we're prepared for that, right? That's the initial response. The initial response, within seconds or minutes that officers are there, they're prepared to be able to take action if needed to. At that point, being able to, they were determined that, hey, let's work on evacuations. Let's work on containing the problem that we have here. Let's then work on trying to communicate if the situation allows it. If deadly force allows, to be able to protect the lives of the hostages, and that's something that the officers were prepared to be able to do at any given time as well, to be able to have additional teams that were nearby to respond towards that. But when the situation allows and when it's feasible, we want to be able to do what we can to try to communicate and bring this to a peaceful resolution, and that's where we ultimately elected to go. But throughout the entirety of this event, there were additional measures in place to be able to take lethal force if the situation dictated that.
Let's talk real quick about, I know that the alleged bomb that was reportedly strapped to him is being tested. FBI's looking into that and everything. Your initial thoughts or reactions from some of your officers on the scene that saw him?
Yeah, the initial reaction is that it looked and appeared to be real to them. When you have a situation like this and you have people whose lives are at stake, you want to treat every threat as if it's real, as opposed to assuming that something is fake, and we're not willing to bet people's lives on that. So it was credible enough at that point that our officers believed it to be real. And as the criminal investigation wraps up with the FBI, that's something that we're interested in learning from them, as well as what type of device was it? Was it active? Was it not? What was the actual range of it? There is a lot of information that we still don't have, that we want to wait for their criminal investigation to wrap up. But these are things that we're continuing to evaluate and learn on ourselves. While I'm overall extremely pleased with the department's response, we are dedicated to constant improvement, and there are always things that we can learn. I read after-action reports from critical incident events that happen all across our country where police officers respond, and I try to take those lessons learned, bring them back, distill them, train to them, and make sure that we're in a good position to be able to respond. And I do believe that part of the reason that the police department had such a good response is that while we haven't trained to this exact scenario, critical incidents and critical incident response is something that our tactical teams, that we try to train our patrol officers on. And I thought we saw an excellent response, not only from the officers, the line level officers and line level supervision that was responding. You saw a fantastic response from a command and control standpoint too, being able to set up and try to do the very best that we can to bring some order to chaos, to be able to protect our community as well as those that were directly and immediately impacted.
There was also a lot of comment about the live streaming. There were a number of live stream feeds that were active throughout the entire situation. I know that in the past, certain videos that have popped up have been used by various fire and even law enforcement, maybe as training type things. In this type of situation, I know that you're still evaluating everything. Are you looking at more as a positive, or was it something that needs to be addressed down the line?
Yeah, I think it depends. It's information, right? And what you do with information translates to whether it's just noise or whether it's intelligence. But ultimately, that information that can come from streamers or things that in certain instances can be helpful to the police department, and other ways it could be detrimental. It's information that's out there, so you have to remember this is a two-way street. The person that is inside is also able to take that information. They're also able to see, maybe where officers are located and what's happening there, which could allow them to be able to develop some level of a counter plan. And so it's the world that we live in, and the information being out there and so readily available and easily accessible, that it's a factor that has to be taken into consideration by the officers that are responding, and specifically by those in command at the command post. It's information that we're going to have to grapple with.
And finally, you mentioned earlier the FBI coming in for a meeting today with the BPD, sort of a debriefing there. Is there anything in particular out of this entire thing that you're hoping that you want an answer to, that you're looking for?
Yeah, so you know, we have an excellent working relationship with the FBI. We have detectives that are assigned to their task force. We always have, and so we maintain an excellent working relationship with our federal partners. And so you know, we have regular meetings with them, but we do want to get some initial information about how the criminal case is unfolding. It's very common after critical incidents that, you know, 2 to 3 days later, that we get a chance to be able to start putting information together to go, here's what we initially have, here's where the criminal investigation is, here's some of the things that we still need to do. So, you know, I'm just interested to learn as much as I can about the case and where we are with it on the criminal side. But I know that this is something that's going to take, you know, days, weeks, and months for us to fully complete the investigation, to go through body-worn camera, audio logs, 911 calls, people to be able to express what they were doing, when they were doing it, what their thought process was, and putting all that stuff together in some type of an after-action report that's useful for us and helping to improve our response going forward, and to be able to potentially share within the profession as well, to ensure that wherever you know, we can share this information so officers are responding better in their communities to keep their communities safe.
Bakersfield Police Chief Brent Stratton joining us in Studio B this morning. Appreciate your insight.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
We'll be right back.